Well, hello all you wonderful people out there in YouTube land. This is a Texas Special and welcome to the Texas Special YouTube channel. And this month we have a train set review for you guys. Now this is the Lionel Mopar Express freight set. This set was from 1987. It has been on my wish list for a pretty good while, pretty much ever since I discovered that this set even existed. Anybody out there in the real world outside of YouTube land that knows me knows that I am a big time Mopar guy. Now, not in the way of like tuning and hot rods and whatnot, but if it ain't a Chrysler product, it ain't sitting in my driveway. As I'm sure many of you that watch the channel and watch my Railfan videos have seen, I drive a black Ram, previously a blue Ram, previously before that a Dodge Dakota. So of course the Dodge guy wanted essentially a Dodge train set, and that's what I've got with this right here. So we are going to do a little bit of a deep dive into this train set and see what it is all about. This Lionel Mopar Express freight set comes with a 442 type die-cast steam locomotive with the sound of steam roller in the tender. Regrettably, it does not have a whistle of any variety. So, to start off with, you have a die-cast metal locomotive. You have one can motor right here. The detail on this thing is what you would expect from any low-end MPC era Lionel train set. 100% cast on with the exception of a separately added bell. As you saw in the opening shots of the video, this thing does have an operating headlight and a puffing smoke unit. The rods are stamped sheet metal and held on by 2 hex head screws, and it's pretty much the same on either side of the locomotive. There's some minor detail differences on the fireman side of the locomotive, but not really enough to justify picking this thing up and flipping it around. You have cast on hand railings here, piping details, and a Lionel stamp right here cast onto the boiler. You have this nice white trim. You have the ME for Mopar Express, and the front of the locomotive features non-operating green classification lights. What they are is essentially green gems. The tender is a plastic construction with these funky looking sprung trucks here. Now these are one-piece plastic castings, and the spring details are on the either sides of the wheels, and there is roller bearings right here in the center of the journals on the trucks. There is a non-operating rear headlight back here that's cast onto the tender, and you have some decent rivet detailing along the body of the tender. Also present is a cast on coal load, cast on ladder on the rear of the tender, which you'll see here momentarily, and the deck plate for the tender back here, and the cab has some detail. Looking at the front of the locomotive and the front of the tender, you have some detailing here on the tender as far as the deck plate goes, where the fireman would, on the prototype, get the coal out of the tender and shovel it into the firebox. This screw holds the tender body on the locomotive, on the tender frame. You have some rivet detailing along the front of the locomotive tender, and you have this dummy drawbar right here, and you have the actual drawbar right here. This is an old school hook and loop type deal, which you should have been able to see clearly from the side profile of the locomotive. Looking at the front of the engine, you have a cast on coupler cut lever here. There's the pin for the coupler cut lever. You have a dummy coupler that's molded on to the pilot of the locomotive, a non-see-through one-piece die-cast pilot that's part of the locomotive body. You have these steps here on the front of the locomotive, along the front of the boiler. The non-operating classification lights. You have some decent detailing for what this is. You have some decent detailing along the cast-on smoke box door, along with the hinges, and you have an air hose right here that's cast on to the pilot of the locomotive. Looking at the rear of the locomotive and the rear of the tender, you can see there is, as I said, some cast-on detailing at the firebox door. You got these two tank-looking things, and you have assorted gauges and whatnot, and some piping detail that is cast on to the the front of the locomotive cab. No cab figures, no crew figures mounted in the cabs like you see in a lot of modern Lionel trains, but that's okay. Like I said, this is from 1987, and I'm not expecting super high detail out of this, nor should anyone else really. For what it is, pretty cool little engine. And these 442s, these old school Lionel 442s, they will pull the house off its foundation if you let them. They will try. These things will pull whatever you put behind them, regardless to train weight. I don't know anyone that's got a layout big enough to actually have a train long enough that this thing won't pull it. You have some cast on grab iron details here on the back of the tender. Supposed to be operating magnetic thumbtack style knuckle coupler. The rear pilot has cast on steps. There is a little metal slot right here that is the second half of what holds the tender body onto the frame of the tender. Cast on ladder, as I said earlier, cast on headlight, non-operating rear headlight. You have another cast on ladder back here to access the coal bunker. Cast on coupler cut lever. And like I said, the coupler is supposed to be an operating magnetic coupler, but unfortunately I had to glue it shut. Now, a common problem with these older Lionel trains that have the plastic couplers and plastic coupler pins is the pin is weak. It flexes, and sometimes you get a really weak pin that just will not stay shut. Now, on a freight car, that's not that, or a passenger car, that's not that big of a problem. You throw that car with the weak pin on the rear of the train. That way the coupler pin only has to pull the weight of either itself or the caboose. With the locomotive, that's not an option. So unfortunately I had to glue the damn thing shut. It is what it is. unfortunately, these MPC era Lionel trains, the trucks are riveted to the frames of the cars and, in this case, locomotive tenders. So it's not an easy fix where I can just swap it out with a new truck with a new coupler. It is a possible fix, but it requires a lot more effort than just, say, unscrewing the truck and popping a new one on. Looking at the underside of the tender body, or the underside of the tender, you can see the frame here has very moderate detailing. You've got an air brake piston here, and you've got random piping and whatnot. There is a air reservoir right here that's kind of difficult to see. This metal wheel, there's this wheel right here. This is the sound steam sound system. Now, if you are familiar with Sound of Steam, great. If you're not, here you go. In the 1980s, Lionel was playing around with how they could do a sound system for their steam locomotives that was low cost, so that they could have more advanced sound features out of their lower end train set locomotives without significantly increasing the cost. So the answer to that problem was this wheel here. This wheel has little compartments, little fins if you would, kind of like, say, an old school water wheel that they would use to power mills and whatnot up in the Northeast. And inside there are plastic pellets that roll around. So as the train goes around the track, the wheel rotates and those loose plastic pellets rattling around inside generate the steam locomotive chuffing sounds. Now, the downside to that is that there's no whistle. So you get the chuff feature, but no whistle. Not really a huge problem for me. I didn't necessarily want the set for the sound features or lack thereof. I wanted the set because Mopar. Here we have a shot of the top of the tender body. You can see this hatch, this cast on hatch. This is where the water on the prototype would go for the water compartment. Like I said, cast on coal load. These are overflow vent valves for the water compartment so that, obviously you don't overfill the tender. And you have some more rivet detailing along the top, the rear deck of the tender. Here on the underside of the steam locomotive, you have the two pickup rollers. You can see the gears on the fireman side of the locomotive that connect the can motor here to the actual drive wheels. Both drive wheels are powered, so these rods are pretty much just for decoration. If I move this out of the way, you'll see the reverser locking switch right here. Forward is unlocked. If you flip this to the rear, like such, it's now locked in whatever direction the reverser is set for when power is next applied to the locomotive. And here's a shot of the top of the locomotive. If you need to take the boiler off for whatever reason to access the motor for maintenance or whatnot, or you have one of these and it doesn't run, you want to poke around inside and figure out what the problem is, you unscrew this screw right here is what holds the boiler to the shell, or the boiler to the frame of the locomotive. So you pop this off, and then you can start taking the front truck off, the rear truck off, and everything just comes apart nice and easy from this starting point here. Here we have the 40-foot gondola that this train set comes with, obviously lettered for Mopar Express. Built by Lionel, January 1987. All the load and weight and capacity information is similar to what you would find for a comparable Lionel 027 gondola from the MPC era. We have plastic trucks and operating magnetic knuckle couplers on either end. Metal wheel sets, obviously. Car's got some pretty good cast on rivet detail, as well as cast on ladder detail, cast on handbrake on the B end of the car, some cast on grab irons. This car is based on a drop end gondola type design. However, the body is a one piece plastic body, so the ends do not drop down. Here we have a close-up shot of the B end of the gondola. The A end looks identical. Apparently this gondola has two B ends, because this back corner over here also has a cast on handbrake. Interesting. Anyway, you have the polling pockets right here. This nice dreadnought type detailing here on the end of the car. Cast on latch detailing for the top corners for the drop down, unoperable drop down feature. And as I said, the thumbtack style magnetic knuckle couplers. You've got the little metal disc here that you can use to open the couplers with a magnetic uncoupling track section, or hit this little tab here on the side of the coupler body and the coupler opens. Looking inside the gondola body from above, you can see loads of rivet detailing. The top side of the actual rivets holding the trucks in place, and this thicker section here to help support the trucks. On the underside of the car, we find very minimalistic detailing. You have the frame and center sill simulated, and you have some support braces here along running the length of the body of the car, but no air brake, no emergency or service reservoir, no triple valve, and certainly no air brake piston. Here we have the way undersized boxcar that comes with this set. This is more in tune with what I would expect out of K-Line rather than Lionel, but still a cool little car regardless. You see you have the offset double door box cars. You got a cast on waybill board here with appropriate rivet detailing. You got door latches, another waybill board, all the door latches here. These doors are not operable. The cast on door rails, built January 1987. All the load and capacity and weight information is legible. You got the ME Mopar Express 1987 for the the year it was built. This pretty cool little Mopar logo here, and of course the Mopar Express logo here. You have cast on grab irons, no stirrup steps, just like the gondola. The same style plastic trucks and magnetic knuckle couplers. So here we see the A end of the car. You have another cast on waybill board, but this one actually has some lettering stamped onto it. 9040 series is what it says. You have some pretty good rivet detailing here along the edges of the panels of the car. Another cast on ladder for access to the roof. Some polling pockets. You can see this little metal slot here that helps hold the body onto the frame of the car. The car does have a metal frame. So here we are looking at the B end of the car. You have a little nub here that's off of the frame. It is just, you pry this back from the frame if you want to pop the body of the boxcar off of the frame. Another waybill board. You have a cast on handbrake wheel, a little brake perch, cast on handbrake hardware here, another cast on ladder, and of course the polling pockets like you saw on the A end of the car. On the roof of the car we find grab iron, cast on grab irons here and here. This metal grate catwalk is cast on to the roof of the boxcar, as well as some cast on rivet detailing between the individual, what would be in the real world, individual roof panels along the roof of the car. On the underside of the car you find a little bit more detail than I was expecting. You've got the air brake piston there. You have some air brake lines. That little dot right there is supposed to be a simulated triple valve. You have the emergency and service reservoir right there, as well as, if you look carefully, you can see individual boards that are scored into the plastic to simulate the floor of the car, and the rivet detailing which would model the center sill and braces being bolted to the floor. Here we have the flat car with the 20-foot piggyback trailers. We have plastic trucks and plastic magnetic knuckle couplers. You can see the handbrake detail here, separately applied handbrake wheel with associated linkages and rods and chain cast onto the side of the car. Built January 1987, Lionel. You've got the cool little Mopar logo here, ME1987, Mopar Express, 1987. You have cast on stirrup steps, as you can see, on either end of the car. These are present on the opposite side of the car as well. And you've got these wheel chocks here to help hold the trailers in place. If you've been playing with MPC era, or at least familiar with MPC era Lionel, then you know all about this car, and they still make them in roughly the same style today, the modern era piggyback flat cars in the 027 variety. These trailers are not affixed to the flat car in any permanent manner. They do come off. They lack the associated pin to mount to a attach to a truck. The wheels do not roll freely. They do take a little effort. They roll, but they take effort. And just like all Lionel piggyback type trailers, the roof comes off. dolly for the trailer also is, it will fold back. Now, I'm going to take these trailers off. We'll take a look at the deck of the flat car. You can see some non-slip tread here on these two end panels. We've got individual boards molded into the body of the plastic body of the flat car, and these are done up to look like they're made out of boards as well. Coming around to the underside of the car, you see very minimal detailing. You have some beams and frame supports implied, and you see the undersides of the stake pockets that are along the sides of the car, but there's really not a whole lot of detailing underneath this flat car in the way of air brake apparatus or bracing and rigging, just that little bit of simulated frame detail, which is fine. You're not really going to be looking at the underside of the car under normal circumstances anyway. Looking here at the B end of the car, the A and the B end of the car are identical, with the exception of the handbrake detail on the B end of the car. You have these cast on, a little overly thick cast on grab irons here on the end of the car. That's really the only detail that stands out on the A or B end of this flat car. You have the operating magnetic knuckle couplers. Pretty much all there is to this guy. And last but certainly not least, we have the little red caboose that is the period to this sentence we call the Lionel Mopar Express. You can see some pinstriping detail here, a Mopar logo, ME1987, built January 1987 right there. The Mopar Express logo. You've got a separately applied smoke jack detail for the coal or wood burning stove that would be inside a real caboose. You have nice cast on rivet detailing all along the side of the caboose. 6 individual windows with cast on window frames along the sides of the caboose body and the cupola. Plastic body construction. The cupola and the main body of the caboose are all a one-piece molding. Plastic trucks, roller bearing type trucks, and plastic couplers, operating magnetic knuckle couplers. You can't see it all that well, but there is some non-slip tread that's simulated. The detailing is cast onto the surface of the platform, the end platforms on both ends of the caboose. The handbrake and chain are molded onto this end piece right here, which is tucked in to a little hole up under here, which you can actually see that little tab that it slides into right there. You have cast on ladder and bracing details and whatnot. There is non-slip tread simulated on the steps of the caboose, and as I said, you can see the operating magnetic thumbtack style knuckle coupler here. The opposite end of the caboose is 100% identical, so I'm not flipping it around for y'all to see the exact same thing. The only difference is the cupola would be closer to the end. On the underside of the caboose, we find an air reservoir, very basic frame detailing with rivet details, and the storage cabinet or toolbox, whatever you'd like to call it, that was on the underside of pretty much every single caboose that ever roamed the rails on a real freight train on the real railroad. No air brake piston that I can find, no triple valve that I can find. Just the reservoir, and actually might be a retention tank now that I think about it, and the toolbox. This is a non-illuminated caboose, as you can tell by the fact there are no pickup rollers or contact wipes or anything like that. So this sucker doesn't light up. Here on the roof of the caboose, you can see these cast-on grab irons along the corners of the cupola. You've got this cast-on walkway. This is all cast onto the body of the caboose. As I said, everything on this caboose body, with the exception of the end platform, railings, and the smoke jack, are all one piece. So all of this is one piece of plastic. It's very well done. You can see some nice rivet detailing along the roof there, along with the catwalk, but like I said, all one piece body construction, all plastic. Given that this is the last product review, regular product review for the year of 2020, given the fact that this will be the final product review for the year, at least the final regular product, monthly product review for the year, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I am going to run this guy alongside with the other two main lines running as well. So I hope you found it interesting and informative, and I hope you enjoy the run.